Thank you so much, Mylita. It is terrific to be back in the John Clark Performance Studio. And since it is Public Radio Music Day, we've been celebrating by inviting long-standing friends to join us here in the studio. And I'm really happy this afternoon to welcome cellist Tanja Bechtler. She's going to play a short program of music from the Bach cello suites. And I'm going to turn things over to Tanja now to talk to us about the first couple of minuets that she's going to perform. Tanja?
Thank you so much, Frank. Thank you for having me. And so this first Minuet 1 and Minuet 2 is from Suite number 1 in G major, and it's when he was a little bit younger, more happy, and it's typical to pick one mood for these dances. So for this one, I picked the mood of being somewhat more noble and joyful. And you will hear the Minuet 1, which is going to be in major, and then the Minuet 2 will be in minor, and then the recap goes back to Minuet 1.
Two minuets from the first cello suite by Johann Sebastian Bach, performed by our good friend Tanja Bechtler here in the John Clark Performance Studio on Public Radio Music Day here on WDAV. I'm Frank Dominguez, and it's so nice to welcome Tanja back. Tanja, I've said this a few times before, but in terms of long-standing friends, WDAV can sure count on you and your husband, Bob Teixeira. You've performed for many events for WDAV, and I can remember when this building was new, the Newell building where we've been for now going on 20 years. Before the studios were even built, we had a function here, and you and Bob came out to perform for our patrons, and we're just so grateful for the long-standing friendship that we've enjoyed with you. So thank you, and welcome back to the John Clark Performance Studio.
Well, thank you so much, and we are so grateful to have you, and what a fantastic station from music that we get to hear from all over the world, new composers. It's just an inspiration. And thank you so much for sharing that music with us. And like I said, some composers I've never heard of before, so I'm always learning something new.
It means a lot to have a musician react that way to the music here on WDAV, and we really appreciate your time this afternoon. Catch us up on what's been going on with you over the last few years that we haven't had a chance to visit like this. We stopped having these sessions in the John Clark Performance Studio, of course, because of the pandemic and locking down and things being closed off for a period of time. Things start to finally feel a little bit more back to normal. What's it been like for you in the interim?
Yeah, it's fantastic to be able to perform again with the orchestra here in Charlotte and also in Charleston. And Bechtler Museum has their programs again, and we've got 7 concerts coming up there, which has been just wonderful. And students are coming back. We're teaching some of them in person again, and I still have some via Zoom, but it's definitely, it's nice to feel that everyone's feeling comfortable again, to come out again and enjoy live music. So, but yes, it's great.
It's so nice to hear you playing Bach. These pieces are so familiar, and lots of cellists, of course, learn the repertory. It's sort of expected of them. But I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about your own approach to these pieces and why they're important to you and why you include them in your repertory.
Well, for starters, we had no choice because it's just part of the education, like you said. And then it was just always something new to learn, new bowings, new fingerings, and the bowings are more related to the phrasing as opposed to just a bowing. And so the edition I'm reading off is Martha Gershevsky and Barbara Muser, who is a professional expert at Baroque music, and it's been very interesting reading about, why these bowings, why she chose them, and so it keeps me interested because it's always different, and it seems like every year I have a new bowing that I'm trying out, and it doesn't have to necessarily always be the strict Baroque style either. Mm-hmm. I sometimes add some extra vibrato in there, and it's Bach just laid such a foundation for all the musicians to come afterwards, and he was a bit of a rebel back then, especially in the saraband, using some of those intervals that the church did not approve of, and different meters and more freestyle, like in saraband and also in the preludes, and it's just it's almost a staple of music. Bach is just a staple for everybody, I think. It's something you should study or at least listen to if you're not a musician.
Well, you've whetted my appetite to hear that saraband, so why don't we do that now?
So that's from the D minor, his second suite. So you'll hear it's a little bit more serious, but these sarabands, I feel for them a little bit more of an intimate, personal feel.
The Saraband from the Second Cello Suite by Johann Sebastian Bach, performed by Tanja Bechtler in a session from the John Clark Performance Studio here on WDAV. I'm Frank Dominguez. We have this ongoing series, Tanya, the Pause for Reflection here on WDAV, which we do twice a day at 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. I think we got a bonus pause for reflection there with that beautiful saraband that had such a introspective quality to it in the way you played it. Thank you so much. It was really beautiful.
Thank you, Frank. I left out the repeats, or usually those are always the first and second sections repeated.
Well, repeat or not, it really had a wonderful feeling for me. And I wondered if you could talk to us about something. It's not unusual in interviews like this to ask a musician to talk about their instrument, but I'm going to ask you to talk about your chair, because I understand you're making a gift of this chair to WDAV and the performance studio here. It's a cello chair. Tell us a little bit about it. And thank you in advance for the gift.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it can be used not just for playing an instrument, but for any time you're working, sitting at the computer, it just slightly shifts the center of gravity. And it's made by Hora, Hora, and it's a company that has a physical training that affects really your nervous system. It also works with gravity. It's physically rejuvenating, energizing. So it's got, and then the third component is the intellect. So it works with all very important components of the body. And it's just, it's made an enormous difference in my life. And this chair is just part of that company.
Well, I thank you for the gift, and I hope folks here at WDAV won't be surprised if I sneak into the performance studio to use the chair sometimes, because it sounds like I could use it. I think I might benefit from it greatly.
I'll have to give you another one just for yourself.
Okay, well, I'm not exactly pitching for it, but
Okay.
I'll let you think about that some. Let's talk a little bit more about the theme here of Public Radio Music Day that we're observing today, and specifically in terms of your playing and your career as a musician here. In what ways has it been helpful to have a station like WDAV here? You mentioned discovering some new composers, but I wonder if there are any other aspects to it that you value.
Well, I mean, the beauty of classical music, we don't want that to get lost. It's really, really important. And I think that's a huge mission that you all have, and you are accomplishing it. So we do not forget all these great composers, and so we can, other composers too, can get inspired and keep writing music. So it's also, of course, the joy of hearing that, and one can never have enough joy in life, I don't think. So it can be from the ears or the eyes, but certainly for me, the ears is very important since I'm a musician myself. So,
well, thank you again for being here. We're going to conclude the session with a couple of bourrées from the third suite. What would you like us to know about these pieces?
Well, these are lively, and they are dances again, like all of the movements are from the suites, and it goes back to Louis XIV, and back then, slowly these dances started to be just listened to, as opposed to also have dancers that go along with it. And Bourrée 1 and Bourrée 2 happens to be this from the third suite, just one of my favorites.
Music with the familiarity of an old friend. Two Bourrées from the Third Suite by Johann Sebastian Bach, performed by a long-standing friend of WDAV, cellist Tanja Bechtler, on this Public Radio Music Day from the John Clark Performance Studio. I want to make sure you're aware, listener, that there are a few more activities happening today to mark this special day for public radio and its role in introducing musicians and music lovers to various works of art. We have coming up at 4 o'clock a visit from a new friend of the station, classical guitarist Alan Mearns, who'll be performing for us. And if you enjoy hearing these live sessions from the John Clark Performance Studio, make a trip to the WDAV website, wdav.org. You'll find a link there on the homepage to an archive of sessions from the John Clark Performance Studio, as well as audio of the latest live broadcast we did a few weekends ago of the Charlotte Symphony, and also some of the noteworthy concerts we've done over the past couple of years, bringing together popular musicians with classically trained musicians for some genre blending and community building. Tanja Bechtler, thank you so much for being here this afternoon. It's really made the day special for us.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you all for having me today.
WDAV is really pleased to be celebrating Public Radio Music Day, which is sponsored by the Bechtler Museum of Modern Art.